Weather can be so wild around our area, probably in many areas. Here you can see it's early in the morning. The sun is just about ready to come up through those trees. And today in the early spring, before most of the trees have begun leafing out at all, it will be in the mid 80s, low to mid 80s, which is pretty darn warm for this early in the spring. We are actively in the process of, we're finalizing our shipping and our handoff of bare root plants. We've been watering these plants as needed. They're asleep, so it's okay. But in the garden, we're hoping to start really getting transplanting going and seeding going, the annual cropping systems going. So needing to water, needing to keep plants alive and healthy as we do little transplants of plugs and pulled apart divisions. We need a fair bit of water already. Normally this time of year it's cooler, it's raining more frequently, and so where are we going to get that water? I'd like to talk about some ideas in this video. We normally collect roof water off of our home, very ragamuffin style, an old, somewhat broken but still functional enough tube into an IBC tank, and then this one connects with other ones and they share. They have not had enough rain to really fill up, and furthermore, somewhere along the line in this whole system there's a little leak, so I need to assess that, but I just don't have the time right now. Needless to say, there is no collected rainwater available for us. We do have a hose that runs out to here, but we've been using it pretty thoroughly for washing roots, for shipping, and for sending. And we noticed that if we run this long enough, the water in our home starts to get a bit cloudy. I feel like our well is not something that we want to dip into and abuse, since we need it for drinking water and for home use. We've been doing our watering pretty much entirely off-grid for the last bunch of years, so why break that cycle now? But here we've got a nice tank full of water. In fact, it's overflowing a little bit, and I'd like to talk about how I'm setting this up. This is the end of the line of a whole string of series of water holding and distribution systems. I'm going to follow them up to the beginning and then come back down to this one. But this hose goes up to that tank, and that tank goes to a tank in the high tunnel, and the high tunnel one is filled from a pond. In trying to understand water resilience, there is value in understanding what is in abundance at different times of year. This is a pond we dug a few years ago where we were able to dig into a spring layer a bit down, and it seems as though this pond naturally fills from the bottom, especially early in the season. Even without rainfall, there is latent water in the hills that's slowly moving down, and it's coming up into the pond since it's a point of less resistance. And I've talked a little bit before about using bilge pumps, which is like a $30 DC bilge pump that attaches directly to a solar panel, and that can lift water. It's not incredibly fast, but it lifts it. I'll go into greater detail about that in another video soon, but that lifts the water and can feed it into this tank. We've given a little gravity assist here with just some locust boards and then cinder blocks, and so the tank can be filled with energy from the sun, directly lifting water from a pond that is overabundant at this moment anyway. Pretty much with all of our water systems, I try to err on the side of having a T, so there's multiple options. This one is open, which will show where that goes, but we could also open this one to fill a watering can in here or to attach to a hose. And it's not the fastest thing in the world, but that's going to allow us with, if there isn't sun out, or it's evening or early morning, which is a great time to water, we can still get some watering done in here. Having these redundancies in the system add up to a pretty decent amount of resilience. So the pond is full to overflowing now. The rainwater collection system isn't online, but soon enough, the 6 IBC totes that we have upslope will be able to start storing rain. Looks like we might have it in 5 days or so, and we can stop pulling from the pond so it can relax. That hose in the high tunnel attached to the IBC can now allow gravity to send it down slope. Pardon the tubes, we're going to get this all organized, but basically it goes through the fence and into that first tank. There's a neat little innovation there that makes this somewhat quote-unquote automatic. So that red hose comes down to here and then attaches to this little float valve, not entirely unlike what you would see inside of a toilet. And I brought one with me so I can show. I found these online not too long ago. I talked about these in greater detail in another video. I can link to it here. I'm not saying that these are the best, but this is a great basic concept. Maybe folks out there can make their own or innovate from other things they find. These cost a few dollars a piece when I got 6 of them. You can see they have this really funky, well, not funky, but just a different threading. And at first I bought these brass adapters to go from, I think it's 1/2 inch threading to 3/4 for hose. I'll show you a simpler way to do this in a moment, but the basic idea, you get it. There's a water source upslope, you can see a tiny hole, and then you can adjust the level of water you want with this little adjuster. So if I push this down further, it turns off sooner. Right now you can see it's on. If the water level goes down from me dipping in with the watering can, it automatically fills back up and then turns off when it gets to a certain level. The blue hose here going into this tank comes from the bottom of that tank. You can see the hose at the bottom of that tank, and it's doing the exact same thing. These are garden hoses we got for free from folks, or maybe it was $1 or $2 at a reuse store or on the side of the road. I keep my eyes out. People hit these with a lawnmower and then they just throw them out. But you can cut them with pruners and reuse them. And here you can see, instead of an $8 brass piece, I just took a piece of hose with slightly larger internal diameter. This is a 3/4 inch hose that we found on the side of the road. Really useful to have the bigger ones. And that slips over this hose and over the threadings. I thought I'd need a hose clamp, but it turns out it's fine enough. It's a low pressure system. And then I just have a little twist tie of metal to hold it steady. And this one keeps this tank completely filled. I set this up last night and went to bed. I should have stayed around until it got full to make an adjustment that this didn't fill as much as it did because it's overflowing. Now I could be panicked and upset about that, but we've designed for the mistake that happens all the time of not watching closely enough and this overflowing. And where it overflows lands in a walkway that is dug out into a deep bed of wood chips that runs across the entirety of the inside of this high tunnel. This is a wicking swale. So overflow of water here translates into watering the bottom of all of these beds in this high tunnel. It is not wasted water, it is just a slow irrigation water system. So any of the roots of these plants that are down about 4 inches or so now have access to cool pond water, basically, that is being held and stored in the wood chips. The wood chips act as a sponge, but also make it a little bit more comfortable so that we're not walking through mud in here. And so I don't want to necessarily spill, but the inevitability is there that it'll happen sometimes. So designing for a better place for the spill to go than just waste is so worthwhile. That being said, I don't want this to run all day. So what I'll do is adjust this to go down a little bit more and turn that closed. And that will ask it to turn off a little bit sooner. Utterly critical thing about any of these sorts of tanks. There needs to be logs in there. Ideally something that goes right up to the edge and out. So if a bird or a squirrel were to land in, they can get easily to something and get themselves out. We've got mason bees that are hatching right now, so I'll probably end up laying a mesh of chicken wire or metal or something over this that's in the water but allows them to land, get water, and easily climb back out. But you really need to provision for something in your tanks of water so little creatures don't drown. If I can find where I bought them, I will put a link in the description to these. But basically, if you search float valve, maybe you'd do well to get a 3/4 inch MPT threading. I would get that in the future if I could. Or make one yourself, or find somebody who does 3D printing and see if you can't make these where you are. Super valuable, nice automator. And that's our little innovation for now. I think there's an update we'll do where we talk about the solar panel filling the tank and then the overflow going back to the pond as a water feature. So basically the tank stays full, that tank stays full, that tank stays full all the time. Even when we're dipping in and watering, they automatically refill. But that's for another time. I gotta let the chickens out and get some compost turned, and some folks are coming by for plants shortly, so that's it for the window for this video. Please share with us what sort of neat innovations are you figuring out. We've got these tanks that we purchased that are not cheap, but they last a long time. Are there ways to make water holding tanks that are much simpler, much more accessible for folks, that cost nothing or come from the waste stream? Love to hear about that in the comments. Make a link to a video if you've made a video documenting how you hold water in the landscape above ground for irrigation purposes that doesn't need metal. We've landed on that as a decent solution, but that's not accessible to everyone. So let's hear some innovations there. And let me know if you have questions or concerns, and we'll make an update again soon.